What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. These days are already starting to blend together, but
I was going to say, if you're having that tough of a time 3 days into the season, I can't wait to see you in the middle of January.
Well, we saw each other in the middle of January. We had big beards and big bags under our eyes, so I don't think anything's going to change. But yeah, no. 14 games here tonight, 0 tomorrow. I don't understand the NHL. They wanted to put out 14 games against Thursday Night Football and then 0 games against nothing. Doesn't really make any sense. I hit my hat trick pick last night. Pavel Dorofeyev scored Vegas's first 3 goals. My chances of hitting another one this season is it's not going to happen. Probably won't hit another one until 2029 if we're still doing content then. But before I just kick it over to Cliffy, I missed a super chat yesterday from Tiffany, a $5 super chat. If you are in here, I am sorry. She said, new to this. Thank you for the show yesterday. It took Blackhawks emotion out. I went Panthers money line and the under on the game. Also parlayed with the Rangers money line. Sorry for the Rangers. They are atrocious, but congrats to you. Also, if you want to follow our boss at Jake Hari, he puts out free bets on tails. Just look at his Twitter at Jake Hari. It is funny to see him force tweets out, but it is what it is. But joining me for this 14-game monster slate, Archie Manning. What's going on, Cliffy?
Yeah, not a whole lot. Thanks.
Yankees lose.
Yeah, that was incredible. Did all right last night. Managed to 2 main cashes on 2 nights in a row. Honestly, I'll take that considering I didn't have Boston. 14 games on the board here tonight. Before we get too deep, should shout out Arden from Yonkers. He did have a top 3 finish last night over on FanDuel. We had Blackjack Brando in the Discord also have a very good night. Finished not at the top, but very near the top in a lot of his contests. Won a couple big tickets, I think. So congrats to him. Another solid night for the Discord. You had your Dorofeyev pick. Let's see if we can get through these 14 games.
Yeah, I mean, your Habs, they didn't look awful.
I mean, listen, real quick, we do have to get through these games because there's a lot of games. Last year, the Habs played Toronto in the first game, and I brought it up yesterday. It was a 48-save shutout from Montembeault. They got ran out of the rink, and the only reason they had any chance of winning was Montembeault. Last night, I would say the Habs played Toronto even or were even the better team. Yeah. So even though they lost, the fact that they genuinely looked so good and the game-winning goal was a broken stick shot from the blue line that led to an odd man rush, those things happen. So not worried about it. Habs are back on the board here tonight. We'll talk about them shortly.
Zach Balduke, player, but we'll get to that when we get there. 14 games here tonight. $20 super chat from Grade A Fantasy, Arden from Yonkers. Every time I say that, I just think of Mike and the Mad Dog, but low-owned Dorofeyev, Morgan Riley, and Marner along with Boston 1. Thanks for the shout, fellas. Nice hat trick pick. Josh, good luck tonight. Everyone, good luck to you again tonight. I won't hit a hat trick pick tonight unless it's a little heat check for me tonight. So usually after I hit a hat trick pick like Jonas Donskoy, I think my next 3 combined scored 1.3 DK points. So we'll heat check it tonight, but good luck tonight. Hopefully you have a repeat performance.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Arden. Certainly do appreciate the support. Glad we could help out a little bit last night. Boston's back on the board here tonight. Can they do it again? I guess we're going to find out. Let's get to some of those games.
Yeah, and we're kicking it off with Boston. That's why they pay you the big bucks. Look at that transition. Chicago Blackhawks with a 2.7 total. Heading into Boston, the Bruins have a 3.3. It appears, we don't know. They don't have morning skate because it's a back-to-back, but they won, so I would imagine they run back the same lines here. Pasternak, Geeky, Lindholm, Zacha, Arvidsson, Middlestat, Minton, Esamont, Jeannot. I just wanted to say Michael Esamont for you. Chicago going with Bedard, Burakovsky, Doc, Donato, Mikheyev, Dickinson, Nazar, Teravainen, and Bertuzzi. Listen, this is a monster slate, and Boston 1 is one of two teams getting double-digit ownership. I should say one of two lines, the other line being Detroit 1. We'll get there when we get there. 19,600. Pasternak had a 3-point bonus last night. Lindholm scored on the power play. I think Geeky had 2 assists. This is a really, really good matchup. It's the only line I have interest in on the Boston side. Do I want to play a double-digit line on a 14-game slate on a team back-to-back this early in the season? Maybe not. But again, if you don't have to get a ton right here, and there should be multiple paths to victory tonight, hopefully. I don't mind Boston 1 here. This is a much better matchup than they had yesterday. We'll see. Pasternak had that knee tendonitis back-to-back this early. Should be fine. I'm not too worried about it. Would be Boston 1, the only one that I have super interest in. But that ownership on a 14-game slate, it's a little high for me. Don't really have interest in the depth of Boston. On the Chicago side, if they're going to fool around with Bedard's line mates, I don't have a ton of interest. I'd say, if you're playing 150, the Chicago line I'd have interest in is Nazar, Teravainen, and Bertuzzi at 12,100. And that's if you're using the Colorados or the Tampas or something like that. I wouldn't just go out of my way to plug in Frank Nazar because he had a great game against Florida. But they are 12,100. They're almost unowned here. There's going to be a lot of unowned lines here, and they played well in Florida, so I don't think that should change in Boston.
Yeah, start on the Bruins. I mean, it feels like it's going to be a broken record every time we talk about the Bruins, but it feels like, first line or bust yet again. You mentioned their ownership, 10.6% ownership, 16.3% top 2 stack, coming in just under 20K. I mean, it is a good matchup against Chicago. Chicago was in a close game against Florida on the scoreboard, but if you watch that game, Chicago maybe had 2 or 3 shifts of sustained pressure, and the rest of the time they were just getting bailed out by Spencer Knight or the goalpost. Florida could have won that game 6 or 7-2. I don't think Boston is the quality of Florida. That top line is pretty good, though. We mentioned yesterday how Elias Lindholm produces like a low-end first-line center when he has Pasternak as his winger. So I don't mind Boston here. Over 10% in nearly 20K on a slate like this. We'll talk about teams later on in the slate, but Colorado 1's only $1,000 more expensive. And I think they're a much better line. You know what I mean? And they're not on a back-to-back. So it's just that even amongst the expensive lines, let's say above 18K, I do think there are a couple other options I'd rather play. So if I'm playing 20 max or something, maybe I have 1 or 2 Boston. I think that's fine. If I'm single entry, I don't think they're necessarily a line that I'm targeting. Chicago, I'm actually interested to see how Colton Dach works on that top line, because I think there's a nice comp for him on the Boston side. It's he could be a better scoring Mikey Eyssimont, which isn't, it kind of feels like a slap in the face because Eyssimont keeps moving from team to team, but Eysimont's actually a good depth player. He's fast, he forechecks well, he shoots, he's just not a good finisher. If Colton Dach can be a good finisher, he could be what if Mikey Eyssimont, but actually scoring goals. You know what I mean? So I'm interested to see how that works out. But with that second line perfectly correlated, they're probably going to avoid any kind of tough defensive matchups. I'm with you. I would go back to Chicago too. Now, they only had 7 combined shot attempts, that line, in that game against Florida. That should tell you, they're fast, though. If they're going to score, it's going to be off turnovers and fast breaks and things like that. It's not going to be sustained cycling pressure down low. And I think Boston's kind of slow, so maybe they can do it again. I'm not particularly targeting Chicago first or second line here, but at 12,100, if you are playing a more expensive line and you're looking for a filler, I think Chicago 2 is fine, especially without Swayman in net. Swayman had to make 36 or 37 saves last night to get the Bruins to win. It's not like the Bruins played well, right? Jonas Korpisalo isn't Jeremy Swayman. I don't mind Chicago 2 if you need a filler, but that's basically all the interest for me in this game.
Yeah. New York Rangers, they 3.3 total heading into Buffalo. The Bruins have a 3.2. The Rangers have the second highest road total of the night behind Vegas They had one high danger chance against Pittsburgh in their home opener, which is abysmal, but they are running back Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere, Miller, Zibanejad, Cooley, Sheary, Radish, Laba. Buffalo going Thompson, Norris, Benson, Tuck, Zucker, Kulik, and then McLeod, Quinn, and Doan. Listen, like, I don't really love the Rangers here. Like, last year, Buffalo kind of was a pretty good defensive team. They did it, and it's hurt their offense. So I don't know if they opened it up a little bit more, or I don't know. They didn't look great, but I have no problem going back to Zibanejad, Miller, and Cooley here. I think I prefer them to Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere. You're getting them for half the ownership. You get $200 in savings. They're not a priority for me by any means, but like if you're making $20 to $150, they're definitely in that mix in that $16,000 to $18,000 range. Maybe I just have a bad taste in my mouth from the other night, but there's in my single entry lineup. I doubt I'll get there, but that road total is significant, so it is definitely something that you need to look at. No interest in the bottom six of the Rangers this time. That is not a 3-game slate or whatever. It is 14, and there's no reason to be playing those guys on a 14-game slate. Buffalo side is more interesting to me. I know it's Igor Shesterkin and that, but like there's not a ton of ownership here, and they are cheap enough where they're like kind of a mid-range line almost. If you want to go to Norris, Thompson, Benson, I think that's fine. Like Cliffy will talk about it if you want. I don't know if he will, but Benson and Thompson in the preseason had ridiculous creation numbers. They're fine. But the line that I have more interest in because they're cheaper is Kulik, Zucker, and Tuck. You get 2 of the 3 on the power play. We haven't really seen the Rangers penalty kill, but last year it was terrible. Igor bailed them out. Alex Tuck being on the top power play to start the season is big for Buffalo. I prefer the Buffalo second line here. I don't mind going to the Buffalo top line. But again, like I don't think I'll be plucking much from this game in single entry. It's more like 320. The more lineups I'm making, the more I'm considering this game because it does have a 6.5 total.
Yeah, on the Rangers side, I think for me is Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere. Lafreniere, he had 7 shot attempts or something in that first game, 6 or 7. Like he was all around the net. The other thing is something I mentioned on the show a couple of days ago was like we know that line is going to be good. They were great 2 years ago. They're pretty good last year, even if they had their ups and downs. We don't really know how JT Miller, Zibanejad, and Cooley's going to figure out or work out long term, rather. And I only saw bits and pieces of that Rangers-Penguins game. JT Miller did not look very good.
He's still hurt.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. And I don't like saying that on this show because we're just guessing that he's still hurt. But he was hurt in the preseason. He didn't practice or play very much in the lineup for game 1, but he looked kind of slow. And even JT Miller, who isn't typically very fast anyway, he looked slow even for JT Miller. So like for me, it'd be Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere. If I'm not mistaken, Trocheck and Panarin were 1 and 2 by ice time in that first game as well. I do think they're going to keep leaning heavily on that line. They do have a track record of success. So I would go Rangers too. I'm going to be honest. I think my interest is a little bit more on the Buffalo side here. I will actually go to Thompson, Norris, and Benson. And there's a couple reasons. One, Thompson's their best offensive player. And like, I don't think it's particularly close either. And listen, I'm an Alex Tuck fan. I'm a Yuri Kulik fan. They are not Tage Thompson. Tage Thompson, like if he has a very good season, he can be 50 goals, 100 points. That's his upside. So we've already seen him post 40-goal seasons. The other is, I think Zach Benson, it's going to be one of those seasons where like maybe he only ends up with like 47 points or something like that, but it's just because he's not on the top power play unit. Like if you look at Benson's playmaking, zone entries, defense, like they're all good to great. And he's only 20 years old. This is his 3rd year. He stepped into the NHL as an 18-year-old. I think he just needed a little bit of maturity. The fact that he's remained on the top line all through preseason, all through camp, I think he missed a few days injured, but all through preseason, all through the exhibition, like the reason that he stayed there is because him and Thompson were so good together when they played last year. They look great in the preseason, 16,300. You get 2 out of the 3 on the top power play unit. I'm not a Josh Norris guy, but if he's going to play 18 to 19 minutes on the top line, top power play, skating next to Tage Thompson the entire time, then I'm fine with it. So if I'm looking for a mid-price stack, I kind of like Thompson, Norris, Benson here tonight.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we've talked ad nauseum about Josh Norris and, no need to continue on this 14 games. Like, new internet is big. It's not even the new internet. It's the same internet. It's just upgraded hardware. I'm an idiot, but I'll talk about that on a shorter slate. Montreal Canadiens with a 3 total heading into Detroit. The Red Wings have a 3.4 total. Montreal on the back end of a back-to-back. They're going – I would assume they'll run back Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky, Line Evans, Anderson, Bolduc, Gallagher, Doc, Demirov.
Yeah, the coach said the only lineup change is Jakub Dobeš starting instead of Montembeault.
Yeah, Jakub Dobeš, who's honestly pretty decent backup, I would say. First game for Detroit, their home opener. They're going Larkin, Raymond, Emmett Finney, Alex DeBrincat, Patrick Kane, Marco Kasper. Now, the only other line besides Boston 1 getting double-digit ownership is Detroit 1, Larkin, Raymond, Emmett Finney. I don't know. Like, I know he practiced there for a week. He played a game there. He's not some, like, elite prospect. He was a 7th-round pick in 2023. I worry that he won't last the game there. Interestingly enough, for some reason, I watched some Red Wings preseason, and Michael Brandseg-Nygaard has an absolute rocket for a shot. I think at some point maybe he gets some run up there. I don't know what you really want to do with Detroit 1 there. I guess you could leave off Finney and add in the DeBrincat or Kane for some extra power play because Montreal does take a ton of penalties. Their penalty kill has improved, but until they can stop taking all the penalties, I guess. Like, listen, Detroit last year was one of the highest power play dependent teams in the league. They were ass at 5-on-5. So I think the way you get lower ownership in the high ownership of the Detroit Red Wings is just power play stack. You take Larkin, Raymond, add in DeBrincat. You take Kane and DeBrincat, add in Larkin. You mix and match your guys. Like, if Emmett Finney at 26, if you want to put in Emmett Finney, that's fine. He gets an assist, a shot, and a block, 7.8 DK points at 2,600. You're cruising. But for me, I want to focus on the power play guys. On the Montreal side, like outside of the Sharks, this Detroit blue line is atrocious. But, I didn't see the minutes allocations. I did watch the game yesterday. I should have done that, but Montreal 1's price did come down from yesterday. They're 17,600. I don't mind that, but watching the game yesterday, Doc, Bolduc, Gallagher looked really good. They're 9K. Listen, I don't really love playing teams back-to-back on the road on a 14-game slate, but if you're doing something super expensive in MME with some sort of power play stack, Avs, Lightning, etc., a 2-man of Doc, Kirby Doc, Zach Bolduc is fine. I think Montreal 1 is fine. But for me, my favorite play in this game is doing some sort of Detroit power play stack.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Detroit power play stack. Just to kind of highlight your point, from Christmas to the Four Nations break, which was like February 7th. So we're talking maybe 6 weeks. They had 23 power play goals. The New York Islanders had 26 the entire season. Detroit just absolutely wrecked shop on the power play. I would just straight power play stack. One, because I agree with you. Like, Finney, by all accounts, had a really good training camp. One thing I said on a different podcast was the Red Wings want to leave Kasper, DeBrincat, Kane as their second line, use them in kind of a sheltered role. They are desperate. I mean, desperate to find anyone that works with Larkin and Raymond, whether it's Soderblom, whether it's Finney, whether it's Rancic, Nygaard, whether it doesn't matter. Like literally anybody, as long as you as long as that line stays good to great with them on the wing, they will stay there. So if Finney doesn't drag them down, he's going to stay there. But if he does, he's gone because they're short one guy for a complete top six, and they're just trying to find anything. So maybe he stays, maybe he doesn't. Montreal's top line, Montreal's top line did all play 20 minutes last night, or right around, like maybe Slafkovsky was at like 19 and a half minutes, but they're all over 20 minutes. So that was nice to see. I would probably just take Montreal 1 if I'm playing Montreal. Like they're 17,600. Caulfield and Suzuki have been one of the best offensive duos at 5-on-5 in the NHL over the last couple of years. Like that's not an exaggeration. Like their goals per minute of 5-on-5 are elite. Slafkovsky, I thought, looked great last night. He had 6 shots on goal. Like we mentioned that in the show yesterday. Like looked like he was finally healthy after getting a couple of weeks off at the Four Nations break, and he was shooting a lot more down the stretch, and he had six shots on goal last night. I mean, you mentioned that Detroit blue line. Like they're starting with Axel Saint and Palika on the second pair, which I think is smart because, Justin Holl or whomever wasn't getting it done. But then they put Travis Hamonic on the third pair. Like, what? Anyways, that's why I think Montreal 1 is going to see a lot of siders. So I don't think that really matters, but it does speak to your Dak Bolduc thing. Like I do think they're going to see a little bit of that Hamonic pairing, and that's going to be a great matchup for them. I do think that has some upside. So for me, I think Detroit power play stack is my favorite thing in this game, but I also wouldn't mind playing Montreal 1 here at 17,600. Detroit's penalty kill was bad last year. And that was with either coach. Like McClellan came in at Christmas and they went from last on the PK to second last on the PK. So it didn't really matter. Sorry, third last. It didn't really matter. So Detroit power play is my favorite thing in this game because Montreal typically does take a lot of penalties, and Detroit's power plays typically is pretty good. But I don't mind Montreal 1 here, certainly.
As long as Seider and Edvinsson aren't together, they don't have any good pairs.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Sherratt's not it.
Yeah.
That's why we'll see how Axel Saint and Palika goes, because I am high on him as a prospect. There's also a difference between being a good prospect and being able to play consistently good second pair minutes. It's a pretty big jump.
Braden Schneider. Philadelphia Flyers with a 2.4 total. Heading into Florida, the Panthers have a 3.2. Florida running back for Hagee, Bennett, Marchand, Reinhart, Lundell, Luosterainen, Rodriguez, Samoskevich, Bachwist. The Flyers going Zegras, Tippett, Konechny, Michkov, Couturier, Dvorak, Forrester, Cates, Brink. No, there is no ownership on any of the Flyers lines here. They're all coming in at 0.1%. And, in any other matchup, I'd have interest in Zegras, Tippett, Konechny, but 18,200 on the road in Florida? No, thank you. That's a line that I'm going to like playing, I think. Just not tonight. I think, if anything, I'd maybe one-off Michkov, but, that's just grasping at straws here. Flyers have the lowest total on the slate. They have lots of good offensive players, but, this is a brutal, brutal matchup, even without Barkov, even without Tkachuk. They still have, Florida still has that Forsling Ekblad top pair that just absolutely locks down people. So I'm pretty much out on the Flyers here. I don't particularly love the Panther side either. 19,300 for Bennett, for Hagee, Marchand. They look fine against the Blackhawks, but me, you, and a Coke can could look fine against the Blackhawks. So 19,300, under 2% ownership. But the thing is, that's a little bit pricey when you have, Colorado 1 only $1,300 more. Minnesota Minnesota's $500 cheaper. Boston 1's $300 more expensive. You know what I mean? So it's just they're in no man's land price wise. And, it is Dan Vladar in that. And he legit is he's starting their first game, and he was legit one of the worst backups in the league. That's the sorry state of the Flyers goaltending situation. So like in that case, like maybe you do it in MME. For me, like if I'm going to play a Panthers line, it'll be Lindell, Reinhart, Luce to Reinen at 14-7. Excuse me. Or like one-off Mackie Samoskevich or two-man him with Erod. I think that top line is just in a weird spot price-wise with some other big boys on this slate. So I don't love this game in single entry. I'm out on the Flyers. If anything, Florida 2, Florida 3, take some pieces.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Nothing like the Flyers have the lowest total on the slate. There are 28 teams playing. I have no interest in Philly. I have no interest in paying 19,300 for that Florida line. Like I do think Rick Tocchet is going to make this team better defensively. We talked about on one of the best ball streams. The Flyers were a very turnover heavy, turnover prone team. They tried to create a lot of 2-on-1s, but they also allowed a lot of 2-on-1s and 3-on-2s in return. I think Tocchet's going to change that around. So no interest in 19,300. Like if you want to play Lundell, Lucerine, and Reinhardt, or dip down for super cheap Rodriguez, Samoskevich, if you need a filler, I think that's fine. So Florida 2 or 3 for me, but honestly, just not a lot of interest in this game, generally speaking.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I have interest in this next game, and it is a terrible one. New York Islanders with a 3.1 total heading into Pittsburgh. The Penguins have a 2.8. Pittsburgh going Crosby, Raquel, Ville Koivunen, Malkin, Mantha, Brazeau. We meet again, Mr. Brazeau. Islanders going Horvat, Drouin, Heineman. That is just a who's who of former Habs. Barzal, Lee, Palmieri. Don't really have a ton of like. I guess I'll say Cizikas, Duclair, Sipilkov. Those are three guys playing on a line together. I honestly don't mind Crosby, Raquel, Koivunen here. Like the Islanders are rebuilding. They're not going to be a good team. They may be fun offensively, but they're just not going to be a good team. You know, Sorokin's still a very, very good goalie. It's no surprise that Crosby, Raquel, Koivunen looked good against the Rangers. One, because they kept, for some reason, Sullivan kept sending out Borgen and Susie against them instead of Fox and Gavrikov. But listen, there is no pair that really concerns me defensively, no line that really scares me defensively. So I do like Pittsburgh 1 here. 9.2% top 2 stack, 9.4% projected ownership. Am I going to get there in single entry? A 2.8 bad Pittsburgh team on a 28-team slate? Probably not, but at 17,700, it's worth mentioning. I guess you can mention Malkin, Mantha, Brazeau at 12.9 as a filler. They're coming in with 3.5% projected ownership. If you want to chase with Brazeau, I would reserve that for MME only. The Islanders side is interesting here because their top 6 really isn't that bad. They just have to have Barzal as a center instead of with Horvat because they literally have no one else. So like Horvat, Drouin, Heineman, you get 2 of the 3 on the top power play there. They obviously have no sample because Drouin and Heineman were not on the team last year, but Bo Horvat literally played with a random allotment of guys at the end of last season, and he was a good player still. And that line is only 12,700, 2 of the 3 on the top power play. Heineman, should he be on the top line of an NHL team? No. But, he's not going to be a fish out of water here. So at 12,700, 4.1% top 2 stack, I actually like them as a filler line on this slate. You want to go to Barzal, Lee, Palmieri, 16,300, 9% projected ownership. I have the same feelings about Chalk Islanders last year as I do this year. I don't particularly want to do it. That's why I prefer the Horvat line. You still get 2 of the 3 on the top power play unit in Barzal and Palmieri. I was kind of disappointed that Lee wasn't on the top unit to fully correlate that line. So for me, it would be the Horvat line. If you want to go to the Barzal line, that's fine. I do have interest in the Crosby line, but that's more of an MME play.
Yeah, I'll start on the Pittsburgh side. I'm already nervous, of fading Justin Brazeau. It's just this guy can't do it again. That line actually did look really good against the Rangers, but I agree it'd be Crosby, Raquel, and Koivunen. Crosby and Raquel, almost regardless of who they play with, have typically been pretty good. I'm not super concerned about the matchup against the Islanders. One thing that would concern me is facing Sorokin, but like Sorokin's kind of at the mercy of the players in front of him, right? Like, I think the defense was pretty injured last year, so that's part of it. So like if Adam Pelech can be the guy he was a couple years ago, and Ryan Pollock can, Matthew Schaefer, he steps in and he's a top 4 NHL defenseman right away or something like that. Like this could actually be like a good blue line, but we kind of have to see it to believe it. Until then, like I do think there's merit in playing Pittsburgh. I'm going to be honest, I have more interest in the Islanders side, but for me, it's the Barzal, Lee, Palmieri line. You're right, chalk Islanders, not generally a fan, but 6.5% top 2 stack, 9% ownership. I don't think that's that bad. It's still single-digit ownership with a reasonable top 2 stack percentage for a slate this big. And the reason I like him is just because of how good Barzal and Lee were together last year. 277 minutes together at 5-on-5, 82 shot attempts, 3.5 expected goals, 4.3 actual goals per 60. Those are absolutely monster 5-on-5 offensive numbers. Lee had a great year last year, and that was with the team having a bad power play, him not having a regular top power play role, and Barzal missing over half the season. Matthew Barzal, I think he's 5th or 6th in primary assists per 60 minutes over the last 3 years. The Islanders power play, their expected goals rate goes up 56% when Barzal is healthy as opposed to injured. I do think him being healthy makes a big difference, not only at 5-on-5, but and on the power play. Another one of those mid-price stacks in that like 15 to 18K range, let's say. I do think Barzal, Lee, and Palmieri is of interest to me here. I don't mind going over to the Pittsburgh side. 17,700 is a perfectly fine price to pay. But I think for me, especially where I'm still not convinced that the Pittsburgh defense is going to be any good long-term, I have a little bit of interest in that Barzal, Palmieri, Lee line on the Islanders side.
Ottawa Senators with a 2.6 total heading into Tampa Bay. The Lightning have a 3.3. Lightning going Kucherov, Gensel, Point, Hagel, Cirelli, Goncalves, Bjorkstrand, Gord, Chaffee. Ottawa going Kachuk, Stützle, Zetterlund, Cousins, Perron, Amadio, Pinto, Giroux, Grieg. Now, I'll start on the Ottawa side. I like Stützle, Kachuk, Zetterlund. I think Zetterlund still has stuff to give in his career. He's still young. I liked playing him on the Sharks. This is just a tough matchup. Like, I don't really want to go up against Hagel, Cirelli much this season, let alone on a 14-game slate. So, like, I'm probably going to pass on Kachuk, Stützle, Zetterlund. They're getting 4.2% projected ownership. They're 16,400. So if you get there in your MME mix, I think that's fine. Cousins, Perron, Amadio, like 10,200. You could throw it in that basket of super cheap fillers that, sure, why not? Same with Pinto, Giroux, Grieg. Like, I don't love the Senators here. But, if you need some cheapish lines in your 150 mix, that's fine. The Tampa side is a little bit more interesting here. Kucherov, Gensel, Point, 22,200. We've seen them up in the 26,000s at points. They're fully correlated, obviously. They just, one, they're really expensive. They're the most expensive line on the night. Two, they really weren't amazing at 5-on-5 last year. And this Ottawa team is pretty good defensively. They got rid of their boat anchor and Hamonic. If you want to play Tampa 1, they're kind of borderline matchup proof. I just don't want to spend the 22,200 against a good defensive Ottawa team. I'd rather play Colorado. I'd rather play even, I don't even know who else is late, but Colorado sticks out to me. They're cheaper. So I don't really want to play full Tampa 1 here. You want to one-off Kucherov. He's like that Pasternak conundrum. He's always in play as a one-off. But for me, if I was going to go to a Tampa line, it would be Cirelli, Hagel, Goncalves at 13,600. I'll just throw them into a mix of filler lines that you can use. 13,600 is cheap for them. 3.8% projected ownership. But for me, I feel like this is more of an MME game for me.
Yeah, generally speaking, I just don't have a lot of interest in this game. Ottawa does have one of the lowest totals on the board here tonight. They were a terrible scoring 5-on-5 team last year. And one thing they had a real problem with was just getting off some dangerous shots. Like Brady Tkachuk, like he gets his shot volume. He still shoots like 10, 11%. This team had a real tough time finding, open seams, soft spots in the defense, things like that can lead to high percentage shots. They just couldn't do it. They're kind of like the Nashville Predators in that sense last year. Funny enough, we'll talk about Nashville in a little bit. Until they show me they're a different team. And by the way, Jordan Spence is not playing tonight. They're playing Donovan Sabrango instead. So you're already taking one of your better puck, after Sanderson and Shabbat. Spence is probably their third best puck mover, which means they don't have a puck mover on the third pair. So I just, on a 14-game slate, if this was like an 8-game slate, then I think we're having a conversation. The fact that Brady Tkachuk, who is a shot volume monster, is only 10th by winger projections on Stochastic tonight kind of tells you just how bad of a matchup and how much that low goal total is really impacting things. So not much interest amongst the forwards from Ottawa. On the Tampa side, just as a rule of thumb, I don't play like a $23,000 line on a 14-game slate. I just don't. You're just really limiting your options elsewhere. I'd be way more content playing a couple mid-price lines or, like you said, one-offing Nikita Kucherov or something like that than I would be full stacking. You want to dip down to the second line, fine. I honestly think my favorite play in this game is just a one-off Oliver Bjorkstrand. Him and Yanni Gourde, whenever they have been able to play together, have typically been pretty good, whether it's in Tampa or in Seattle. Bjorkstrand's on the top power play unit. It's only 4,100, I believe. So one off Nikita Kucherov, one off Oliver Bjorkstrand, that type of thing. I generally don't have a lot of interest in stacking either side here.
New Jersey Devils with a 2.6 total heading into Carolina. The Hurricanes have a 3.3. Carolina going Jarvis, Aho, Ehlers, Svechnikov, Stankoven, Blake, Stahl, Martinook, Carrier. Devils going Hughes, Bratt, Dodonov. What a time to be alive. Timo Meier, Nico Hischier, Dawson Mercer. Okay. I'll start on the Devils side. Hughes, Bratt, Dodonov going to run into Stahl, Martinook, Carrier. Carrier wasn't, Stahl, Martinook, great with Jarvis. Very, very good with Carrier. Under 2 expected goals against per 60 over a 200-minute sample last year. That really takes me out on Hughes, Bratt, Dodonov. I don't like stacking top lines going into Carolina. Evgeny Dodonov being on the top line in 2025 is just a problem. So I'm out on Hughes, Bratt, Dodonov. Dawson Mercer being on a second line in 2025. I get it from a sense that they're trying to lengthen the lineup, but at the same time, it's just if anything, I'd get to Timo, Hischier, Mercer, but again, that's a MME play. So I don't have a ton of interest on a team going into Carolina on a 14-game slate. The Carolina side is much more interesting to me. Jarvis, Aho, Ehlers, 17,600. 7.3% top 2 stack, 6.1% ownership. Normally, I would be concerned that, because Stahl goes out against top comp, that Aho, Jarvis, Ehlers are going to see a bunch of that Hischier, Meier, Mercer line. But Hischier and Meier were good defensively with anyone but Mercer last year. So I don't mind that Jarvis, Aho, Ehlers line. The one thing that does give me some pause, when the Devils were fully healthy last year, they had arguably the best penalty kill in the league. So, I think Carolina 1 is fine here. I don't know if I'm going to get there in single entry. 20 lineups, I'll for sure have some. 150, obviously, I'll have some. Don't mind a Svechnikov one-off either. You want to stack that second line at 13.6, you can throw them into the basket of filler lines that you could potentially use in MME.
Yeah, oddly enough, these were the first and second best penalty killing teams in the NHL last year. So not really a great power play matchup for either side. if they can be anywhere as close to they were. And like the Carolina has been like a top 3 penalty killing team, it feels like, for nearly a decade now. So like I'm not super concerned about that. What I will say, like I was looking earlier, Jack Hughes he's been kind of fine against Carolina. I was looking the last 3 years. He has 12 goals and 32 shots in 10 games against the Hurricanes. That's actually not that bad considering how good Carolina typically is defensively. Here's the problem is they have Luke Hughes running the top power play unit. Over the last couple of years, when Luke Hughes is running the top power play unit, the Devils' expected goals rate goes down 30%. So a bad power play matchup gets to be an even worse power play matchup. And also, like, I do think, the defense is going to be improved from Carolina this season. I think bringing in Keandre Miller is going to make a pretty big difference in the mobility of that blue line. I think for New Jersey, like if I was 20 maxing, maybe I have one of the Hughes line or something like that because, Carolina, they do limit shots overall, but they do still allow a fair number of high danger shots. And, if Hughes starts off the season a little hot, he really could have a big night here tonight, even though it's not a great matchup. But again, it's one of those, like if this was our 7 or 8 game slate, I'd be heavily considering them. On a 14 game slate, I just don't see the need. Like my interest is definitely on the Carolina side. Ehlers, Aho, Jarvis, like bringing in Ehlers, you talk about a guy that's made for Carolina hockey. Like he's one of the 10 best forwards in the NHL in neutral zone transition and gaining the offensive blue line, things like that. And that's exactly what Carolina does. And yeah, add him with Jarvis and Sebastian Aho. They're perfectly correlated. Again, not a great power play matchup, but maybe Carolina's going to have a much better power play with Ehlers there. We did see how good Winnipeg's top power play was with Ehlers last year. So, I do think this is one of those lines where if they're as good as we think they can be in 3 weeks' time, they're 19,600, not 17,600. So I do have some interest in Carolina 1 here. Carolina 2, that's Svechnikov, Stankov, and Blake. They're interesting to me, but the problem is they're kind of priced in that no man's land at 13,600. Like they're not quite a filler, but they're not a main stack. You only get one guy on the top power play unit. We don't know how good they're going to be. Stankoven was a center when he was younger as a prospect. Obviously, he hasn't played there that much at the NHL level, so we don't really know how that's going to go. So for me, this game is about Carolina 1 in my single entries.
Columbus Blue Jackets with a 3 total heading into Nashville. Predators with a 3.1. Our Columbus Blue Jackets, I may add. Columbus going Marchenko, Monahan, Voronkov, Fantilli, Jenner, Sillinger for reasons beyond belief. Ken Johnson, Charlie Coyle, Olivier. Nashville going Forsberg, O'Reilly, Brady Martin. Marchessault, Bunting, Halla, Stamkos, Evangelista, Svechkov. I think Evangelista is playing.
No,
it's
Joaquin Kemmel,
right? Okay, so yeah.
I mean, that happened right before we came on the air, so I haven't checked Twitter lately, but they did say that Evangelista stayed on after morning skate to do some work with one of the coaches, and Kemmel didn't, so that would be an indication that Evangelista's not.
Yeah, I mean, he just got into camp, so that makes some sense. We'll start on the Columbus side. Marchenko, Monahan, Voronkov, when Monahan was healthy, was one of the best lines in the NHL last season. They go out a lot of the time with that Werenski pairing, which obviously helps everyone involved. They're 17,100 coming in under 1%. They're kind of priced in a weird range because there's probably like 634 lines priced between 16 and 18,000. It's just a matter of which one you like. Listen, Nashville was a dumpster fire last year. They were bad defensively. They had a bad penalty kill. Yossi's healthy now, but they still like their right defensemen are Adam Wilsby, Nick Perbix, and Justin Barron. So like under 1% here, I don't mind them at all. I wish they were fully correlated, but Voronkov came off the top unit as soon as Boone Jenner was healthy. So, beggars can't be choosers there. It would be Columbus 1 for me. I don't particularly love Columbus 2 with Cole Sillinger there. Listen, like they love playing this guy minutes and they're trying to lengthen the lineup, but I don't have interest in Columbus 2. Columbus 3, like Olivier and Johnson, I think can do some stuff, but like Charlie Coyle is just a guy at this point. So it would be Columbus 1 or bust for me. Nashville, like if you don't know who Brady Martin is, he was the 5th pick in the draft this past year. I don't know what reasonable expectations are for him, but they are 16,200 going up against a Columbus team that was awful on the penalty kill, that wasn't very good defensively. So I don't mind that top line. I think if you want more power play exposure, you take out Martin, add in Stamkos, something like that. So it's really like some sort of Nashville power play stack or Columbus one.
Yeah. On the Columbus side, my interest is the top line. You mentioned how they're not coming in with any ownership, and they certainly are not. 0.9% ownership, 2.9% top 2 stack at 17,100 on this slate. Last year, Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov played 294 minutes together. Earlier, when I said Barzal and Lee had absolutely monster offensive numbers at 5-on-5, Monahan, Marchenko, and Voronkov, more shots, more expected goals, more actual goals than Barzal and Lee. Like, they were even better than that. They were legitimately one of the best offensive lines in the league last year. And I do think a big part of it, as you mentioned, is playing with Zach Werenski. Monahan and Marchenko, when they were on the ice together, played 56% of their 5-on-5 time with Zach Werenski behind them. Zach Werenski plays a lot, but he doesn't play 56% of the even strength time. So they make a point to put him out with that top line as much as they can. And I do think that makes a big difference. 17,100. Like, I do have interest in Columbus at that price point. I look across like Montreal, Carolina are in that kind of range. I do think Columbus is up there with him. Like, Columbus has a 3 total. That's not nothing. That's a pretty high total for being on the road. I'm like you. I do wish they were fully correlated, but I do think I have interest in Columbus 1 here. I'm not worried about any matchups coming back from Nashville until they prove to me that they don't suck. I'm going to assume that they do suck. Like, that's just kind of the way I'm going to look at it. So I do have interest in Columbus 1 here tonight. Second line, like when I do my research, I go line by line and just write down a few notes about each line. For Columbus 2, I just wrote down Sillinger with a bunch of question marks. I don't get it. I just do not get it. On the Nashville side, Brady Martin's interesting because if you talk to some prospect people, he could be the next Brady Tkachuk, which is a guy who is big and physical, forechecks hard, and shoots a ton. And you look at Brady Tkachuk, he was drafted in 2018, 4th overall. Martin was drafted 5th. Tkachuk in his first year, 22 goals and 3 shots per game in 71 games. Like, if Brady Martin's that, he's going to be a really good rookie. But of course, saying Brady Martin's going to be one of the 10 or 15 best wingers in hockey is obviously very lofty. But I think the fact that he's remained on the top line kind of tells us it's one of those things. Like, Nashville's not in the spot that Detroit is, right? Like, Nashville, I think they're already looking towards the future, which is why you're seeing Brady Martin in the lineup to begin with. But if he wasn't ready, if they didn't think he was ready to play on the top line for this team, with Roman Josi coming back, with Philip Forsberg and trade rumors and all that, they wouldn't have him there. So I do think there's a little bit of interest for me in that Nashville top line. 16,200. You get Forsberg and O'Reilly on the top power play. I will mention last year, Columbus's penalty kill struggled a lot, giving up shots in and around the net, which is kind of like a Ryan O'Reilly special. So he's not a guy I would drop off the stack. I don't mind Nashville 1 here. I don't have interest in Nashville 2 or 3. My favorite line in this game is still Columbus 1.
Yeah, obviously.
Minnesota Wild with a 2.8 total heading into St. Louis. The Blues have a 3.1. Minnesota going Kaprizov, Boldy, Rossi, Joel Eriksson, Ek, Vladimir Tarasenko, Marcus Foligno. Blues going Thomas, Buchnevich, Snuggerud, Kyrou, Holloway, Braden Shen, Neighbors, Suter, Joseph. Now, I am a little bit confused at the Blues total here. I'm not going to lie. Like, they have a very good top 6, but Minnesota's pretty much healthy on the blue line. And
Brodin's not playing.
Oh, Brodin's not playing.
No.
There you go. That being said, the Wild's penalty kill
dating back to the War of 1812, atrocious. The problem is the Blues power play sucks. And like normally I would go with whatever line or whatever power play unit Jake Neighbors is on, but they're not really correlated. They go against two lines, and that Robert Thomas Buchnevich Snuggerud line is fully correlated. They're coming in with 0.2% ownership at 16K. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm going to be playing a lot of Holloway Kyrou this season, but I think if I'm playing Blues here, it's Thomas Buchnevich Snuggerud. They're fully correlated. They're getting no ownership. They'll probably see that Tarasenko line. Listen, Eriksson, Ek, and Foligno, very good defensively. Tarasenko, one of the biggest black holes defensively in the NHL right now. So I would take a stab at Thomas Buchnevich Snuggerud. Don't think I'm getting to the Blues in single entry. But yeah, it would be that top line. On the Wild side, it would be the top line or bust. That top line almost in double digits at 9.4% projected ownership. The 11.9% top two stack. They are 18-8, and they're not fully correlated, which sucks because the Blues penalty kill. Awful. They don't take a ton of penalties, but they can't kill them when they do. It obviously would be Minnesota 1 for me. If you do want to leave off Boldy and add in Eriksson Ek, I think you could do that. Vladimir Tarasenko is on the top power play as well. You could do that. You could just stack Minnesota 1. Like, I honestly think the Blues are going to be a good team. They'll contend for a playoff spot. I don't particularly love full stacking Minnesota here. I think, Kaprizov one-off is fine. I think I'd look for another line with a bit lower ownership and a bit better matchup, but I have no issue with Minnesota 1 here.
Yeah, for me on the St. Louis side, it's the St. Louis top line, and it's for the reason that you mentioned. It's the Minnesota penalty kill. I believe it's been bottom 3 in the NHL for 3 years in a row now, which is weird because Minnesota, I think since 2015, has been a top 5 team defensively at 5-on-5 every single season. So a decade straight of being a top 5 team by the defensive metrics of 5-on-5, and yet their penalty kill has been awful for years now. That's why I have a little bit of interest in Buchnevich Thomas Snuggerud, is because they're perfectly correlated on the power play. And I will say the power play was better with Cam Fowler. They were league average for a top power play unit once Cam Fowler got traded over from Anaheim. Now, league average for a top power play unit is still not great. They're still about 30 to 35% worse than the elite power play units, but it's a lot better than what they were doing before Cam Fowler got there. So I don't mind them. The thing is you mentioned it earlier, just how many lines there are in that 16 to 18K range. We went over that Trocheck line from the Rangers earlier. We talked about Carolina 1, Montreal 1. We talked about New Jersey, Columbus. There just is a lot in that price range. They're not necessarily a priority for me, but if I'm playing 150 here tonight, I have a few of St. Louis 1 because they could easily double dog on the power play. Maybe they get an empty netter, maybe they get lucky at 5-on-5, and all of a sudden you're cooking because this is a good power play spot for them. I just think that in a single entry, there are other options that I'd rather lean towards. It's kind of the same thing with Minnesota to a more expensive degree. At that price point, I'd probably just go play Boston against Chicago rather than Minnesota against St. Louis. You know what I mean? Minnesota, St. Louis was really good defensively after they hired Jim Montgomery. So I do I don't mind Minnesota 1 here, but they're more MME for me. For me, it's also St. Louis 1. I do think they're a little bit more MME for me, but I'd be more inclined to play them just because they're a lot cheaper, and I think they're in a better power play matchup, even if the St. Louis penalty kill itself isn't very good.
Dallas Stars with a 2.8 total heading into Winnipeg. The Jets also have a 2.8 total. Winnipeg going Connor, Scheifele, Velarde, Niederreiter, Nemestikov, Iafallo, Chibrikov, Gustav Nyquist, Jonathan Toews. What year is it? Dallas going Mikko Rantanen, Rope Hintz, Sam Steele, Robertson, Johnston, Bork, Sagan, Duchesne, Captain Colin Blackwell. Both these teams have depth issues. They need 1 or 2 more forwards here.
I have no faith that these Dallas lines are going to stick together throughout this game. I guess like if anything, it would be Johnston, Robertson, Bork at 14.8 at 1.1% ownership. But like, do I really want to stack against Connor Hellebuyck on a slate with 28 teams? No. So like, I'm pretty much out on Dallas here, pretty much out on Winnipeg. The one thing I will say for Winnipeg, one is in years past, they will send out their third line against top comp. If they do that again, Winnipeg will see the Duchesne-Sagan line, which is iffy defensively, and they'll avoid the Heiskanen pair and probably the Hardley pair for a decent bit. And the third pair is Leon Bichelle and Ilya Lyubushkin. So at 20,700, I'm not running out to play them because I'd much rather play Colorado. But, you know, I don't mind them in MME just because no one's playing them and it's a little bit better matchup than meets the eye.
Yeah. This is another one of those, like if this was a 7 or 8 game slate, I'm strongly considering Dallas here. And the reason is because of the depth that you mentioned. Like Cole Perfetti's hurt. He's not playing. They lost Nikolai Ehlers in free agency and replaced him with Gustav Nyquist. They're relying on Jonathan Taves, who's 37 years old and hasn't played in 3 years. Adam Lowry is hurt. They lost Mason Appleton. Like Dylan Sandberg is also hurt. He plays on the second pair with Neil Pionk. Over the last 2 years, Winnipeg's goals against rate when Pionk is on the ice without Sandberg goes up like 30%. Now, it's still a little bit better than league average because overall Winnipeg's still a good defensive team. But don't forget, a lot of those minutes would still be with Adam Lowry in the lineup, with Mason Appleton in the lineup, with Nikolai Ehlers in the lineup, with Cole Perfetti in the lineup. All those guys are gone. This isn't the same Winnipeg team that went to the second round last year that had such a great season that led Connor Hellebuyck to the MVP and all that. It's just not. The problem is that there's 28 effing teams on this slate. And I agree with you. I don't think these Dallas lines stick together for very long. You know, if you want a 2-man Sagan and Duchesne, maybe because they're reasonably cheap, I think that's okay. I do think Hintz and Rantanen stay together where like, if that line gets broken up, like I don't think they move Rantanen off and leave Sam Steele there or something. I think it's Sam Steele that gets moved off for Jason Robertson or something like that. So if you want to do like a 2-man of Hintz and Rantanen, I think that's fine. In general, I just don't have interest in this game. Winnipeg, you know, we talk about the Winnipeg power play, how good it was last year. The Winnipeg second power play unit had a higher goals per 60 minutes than the Winnipeg top power play unit. Like the reason Winnipeg as a whole had a great power play is because their second unit was arguably the best in the NHL. The first unit was very good, but they weren't like Tampa Bay good. You know what I mean? They were a step below that. And how they perform without Nikolai Ehlers for a full season, I guess we're about to find out. For me, this is a wait and see. I wish this was a shorter slate. I would have more interest in Dallas because I do think this is a perfect time to pounce on Winnipeg when they have all these like Adam Lowry is probably their best defensive forward and Dylan Sandberg is probably their best offensive defenseman. And they're both out of the lineup, plus all the guys that they lost in free agency. This isn't the same Winnipeg team. I just think there are too many games on this slate, and there's too much uncertainty around the Dallas lineup itself. Not to mention Miro Heiskanen running the power play. Dallas's expected goals goes down 15% when Miro Heiskanen's running it, as opposed to Thomas Harley. So, like, this power play is going to be worse. I do wish it was a shorter slate, then I'd be considering Dallas, but I also think that this is a perfect time to take advantage of a Winnipeg team missing a lot of key players.
Yep. Utah. Are they the Mammoth now? Not the Mammoths. The Mammoth?
Yeah.
Utah Mammoth with a 2.8 total. Heading into Colorado, the Avs have a 3.6. Colorado going McKinnon, Netchus, Lehkonen, Nishushkin, Nelson, Landeskog. Utah going Genther, Cooley, Peterka, Keller, Schmaltz, McBain, Hayton, Krause, Yamamoto. We are going to be Utah slappies this year. This might not be the slate to do it. I like McKinnon, Netchus, Lehkonen just running everyone over. McBain up on that second line, and like Nelson and Landeskog were excellent in the playoffs.
yes, it's Wedgwood, not Blackwood, but this is still a very good defensive team. If you want to get there in 20 to 150, have a little bit, that's fine. I'm more in on the Colorado side. It is that top line for me. And listen, like, if they're going to go out, which I think they will, I mean, they're going to see everyone because they play a ton. But, you know, if they see primarily Cooley, Genther, Peterka, like Cooley and Genther last year weren't great defensively. But like you add Peterka into the mix, who had issues defensively in Buffalo last season, which is probably the number one reason besides how Buffalo wanted to smear his attitude is why he's in Utah right now. So, like, I'm very much in on Colorado 1 here. They're still very underpriced at 20,600. They're coming in with 4.5% projected ownership. Utah, generally decent defensive pairs, bad penalty kill, though. So I do really like Colorado 1 here. You want to go to Colorado 2. I don't particularly love that at their price of 15.9. If they were cheaper, I'd consider it. But, you know, it's a Colorado 1 game for me. If anything, because sometimes they happen to play some pond hockey, I don't mind a stab here or there on Cooley, Genther, Peterka, but it's a Colorado 1 game.
Yeah, earlier talking about Tampa, I said I usually don't spend like $22K on a line. If I'm paying up like over $19K for a line here tonight, it's probably Colorado 1. You know, they did look pretty good against the Kings. Like, the thing is like they didn't always have a ton of possession, but when they did get the puck, man, it seemed like they made a scoring chance happen almost every time that they actually did have possession. Feels like, you know, what they did last year. They do get a ton of minutes. It is a good power play matchup for them. You know, 20,600, like they're a fair bit cheaper than that Tampa line. They're just a bit cheaper than Winnipeg that we talked about. You know, they're $1,000 more expensive than Boston, but they're also coming in at less than half the ownership. So like I said, I think if I'm paying up for an expensive line here tonight, it is Colorado 1. They get the minutes. They get a good power play matchup here. This is a line, you know, we mentioned it in their first game where if they really get rolling, this is probably a $23,000 or $24,000 line in a month's time. So I do think there's a bit of savings here. I can tell you, I probably, like, not for sure because I haven't built my lineup yet. I probably won't have Colorado just because I typically don't play super expensive lines on slates this big. But if I play one, it's certainly Colorado 1. Honestly, I do have a bit of interest in the Utah side. Now, the reason for that is Genther and Cooley have just been very good together, basically ever since Genther got called up. It was January of 2024. He made Cooley a little bit better. I think Genther is going to turn into one of the best, like, dual threat players in the league. Like, could be like the next Jason Robertson. Like, when he has a really good season, it's going to be 40 goals, 50 assists. You know, Cooley and Genther last year playing together, 3.2 goals per 60 minutes. Quick math in my head, that's about 30% better than league average. That's really, really good. They're on the top power play together. At 15,800, they also feel like one of those lines where if they get rolling, like, they won't be super expensive, but they could be like 17,500, 18K, that type of thing. I think Genther's even killing penalties now. So he is going to get regular top 6 minutes, top power play, penalty kill. He's going to get a lot of ice time. I honestly, in the mid price range, I don't mind Genther, Cooley, and Peterka here tonight, generally speaking. But yeah, Colorado 1 is my favorite line in this game, and it's not even close.
Let's get to the first of 81 Super Bowls for Daily Deposit Frostback. The Anaheim Ducks with a 2.9 total heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 3.1. Seattle going McCann, Beniers, Eberle, Schwartz, Wright, Tolvanen, Marchment, Stevenson, Winterton. Anaheim going Terry, Kreider, Carlson, McTavish, Gauthier, Bennett, Sneneke, and then Vetrano, Granlund, Killorn. There's just a lot going on in this game. Seattle is one of the worst teams to stack in DFS. One, because they suck,
But two, they split ice time more than any other team in the league. It is a new coach, but until they can prove to me that they're going to, bell cow a line, I don't believe you. So I guess Beniers, McCann, Eberle is fine because the Ducks are just a bad defensive team. They're going to be fun. Don't get me wrong, but they are not a very good defensive team. The blue line could be improving on the left side at least. The right side is still a circus. But like Beniers, Eberle, McCann, they weren't great last year. And they may only play like 14, 15 minutes. It is kind of baked into the price, and they are fully correlated, but they split units, and both units suck. So, like, push comes to shove, I'm going to save the $600, get under 1% ownership, and go to Wright, Tolvanen, and Schwartz. Now, I would much prefer if Jared McCann was playing with Shane Wright, but Wright and Tolvanen played almost 400 minutes last year. Not the worst production I've ever seen. Jaden Schwartz, even at his stage of his career, is a decent play driver. So I'd go to Wright, Tolvanen, and Schwartz. I don't love the Kraken as it is, just because they split ice time, they split power play units. Everyone sucks. This team is committed to mediocrity, and that's just an issue for me. So it would be Seattle 2 for me. If you like Seattle 1, go for it. On the Ducks side, Seattle's penalty kill wasn't very good last year. They didn't take a ton of penalties. The issue is the Ducks power play sucks. Now, they did bring in Chris Kreider, and that will definitely help them on the power play. It won't really help them 5-on-5. He's kind of a moose on skates with a room temperature IQ at 5-on-5. Not the best, but with Carlson and Terry, I think that could turn into a pretty good line. They're only 15,300, and it feels like they're going to give Leo Carlson a chance to have a very big role early in the season. So for that price, fully correlated, I do have some interest in Carlson, Kreider, Terry. You want a two-man McTavish Gauthier, fine. But really it's the Carlson line and the Shane Wright line for Seattle.
I can tell you right now, there is a 0.0% chance I am playing any Seattle Kraken forward on a 14-game slate. I do not give a shit what the matchup is. So moving on to the Anaheim Ducks, for me, it's Carlson, Terry, and Kreider. They are perfectly correlated on the power play, and you mentioned Kreider's impact on the power play. I think we talked about it on one of the best ball streams. Anaheim, their big problem with the power play last year was that all their shots were perimeter shots. They could not generate anything from the slot or the net front, and that is exactly what Chris Kreider can do on the power play. And if he can generate from the slot or net front, then all of a sudden the opposing penalty kill has to collapse down on him, and then it opens up the perimeter guys like Troy Terry or whomever to get their shots off. So I do think Kreider's big impact is going to be felt on the power play. That is a perfectly correlated top line. I don't know if anybody has looked at the Seattle Kraken defense recently. Ryan Lindgren is on the second pair. Jamie Oleksiak was a good player once upon a time. It's been a couple bad years in a row for him now, and he's getting old, and I'm wondering if he's just completely cooked. They might have two pretty bad defense pairs there. I'm certainly not concerned about any of the forward matchups. Leo Carlson, I think he had 29 points in his final 31 games last year. He really came alive in the second half, much like the rest of the team. For me, I don't mind Carlson, Terry, and Kreider here, just because they're perfectly correlated. If it was one of those 2 out of 3 situations, I would probably ignore them. But they are perfectly correlated. Carlson, I think, is really going to take a step forward this year. Troy Terry, still a good dual threat, goal scoring, playmaking winger. And I do think Chris Kreider makes a difference on the power play. They're coming in under, they're priced under $16K. Carlson I think is going to get 18 minutes plus of ice time. So for me, I do like Anaheim 1, generally speaking. It's the only line I have interest in.
Yeah, I think they push 20 because Strome may be out and they have Bennett Sneneke on that second line. They're not going to push his minutes. So Vegas Golden Knights with a 3.5 total, biggest road total on the board. Actually, it's the biggest total on the slate besides Colorado. No surprise because they're going into San Jose. The Sharks have a 2.6 total just for prosperity. The Sharks' top pair is Nick Leddy and John Klingberg. That maybe would have been a decent pair in 2013. It's 2025. Vegas, they got kind of roughed up by the Kings last night, but they still scored 5 goals, and they ran a 5-forward power play group successfully, and the Sharks will not be able to stop a folding chair from entering the zone. I think going back to Vegas here makes a lot of sense, and the Vegas top line coming in with 1.7% projected ownership, the hurdle line 3.3% projected ownership. I think you can leave Barbashev off, add in Hurdle or Dorofeyev if you just straight on power play stack Vegas here. There's not a lot of ownership. It is a little bit confusing because the Sharks going to be a problem defensively, worst defensive team in the league by a mile. So I really do like the Vegas power play here. The Sharks side is kind of interesting because Macklin Celebrini is maybe already a superstar. Now he's playing with Will Smith and Philip Kurashev. Like, even Bedard couldn't drag Kurashev to like anything useful. Like maybe Celebrini can. I do really like Will Smith Celebrini combo. I wish they were just playing with, like, if they want to leave Toffoli and Eklund together, maybe they play with like Jeff Skinner or like anyone else. But, I don't mind that line at 2.7% projected ownership. I don't think I'll get there in single entry. I'm fine with the Celebrini one-off. With the soft pricing, I was hoping his price would be like $5,800. It is not. Like you want to go to Eklund, Toffoli, Wenberg. They're coming in with 7% ownership. I don't want to play chalk Sharks on this slate. So it would be like a Celebrini Smith 2-man. Again, historically speaking, Vegas doesn't take a ton of penalties, but they have trouble killing them at points when they do take them. So it would be Celebrini Smith.
There will be many nights this year where I'm staying up till 2:00 in the morning to watch the San Jose Sharks score 1 goal on 19 shots. Tonight is not one of those nights, because what you mentioned about Kurashev is right. Like, this guy was so bad, the Chicago Blackhawks said, you know what, you can go play elsewhere. And the Chicago Blackhawks are a team that need about 8 more forwards to take a step and be actual NHLers. And they're like, no, we're good on Kurashev. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's cooked, but Kurashev is typically pretty bad defensively. He's a good playmaker. If Kurashev actually does pan out in the NHL, he'll be like a Michael Granlund, a really good playmaker who sucks defensively. That's basically his upside. That's not who he is right now. He's not anything close to it. So until he A, proves that he can actually stick on the top line, and B, one, it's not a 14-game slate. That's part of it. But B, that the power play can do anything, considering the changes made. Like, if you look at San Jose's power play last year, their expected goals after the Jake Wallman trade went down 40%, 40%, without Jake Wallman. Now, can John Klingberg be the guy? Like you said, in 2015, he could have been. In 2025, I have my doubts. So until, the slate gets smaller or Kurashev proves himself or something like that, I'm out on the Sharks. This is a Vegas game. I said earlier, if I was to play an expensive line, it would be Colorado, and it would be Colorado. If I was to play 2 expensive lines, maybe I have a couple in a 3-max situation. The next choice would be that Eichel line. San Jose gave up the most power play goals against per game last year, and I really don't think that defense got any better. So, I can't see how they're not one of the worst.
They arguably got worse.
It's wild, man. It's not often you see a team in like year 3 of the rebuild and the defense group is getting worse. So again, it's one of those things. Until San Jose proves to me like they're not a bottom 5 penalty killing team, I'm going to assume they're a bottom 5 penalty killing team. So I really do like, going back to Eichel Marner, if you want to add in Dorofeev, if you want to just make it a power play stack, if you want to just leave Barbashev, I think that's fine. Unless this defense shows me that they're not going to be one of the worst in the league, I'm going to assume they're one of the worst in the league. And I really do have interest in either the Vegas top line or a Vegas power play stack.
Calgary Flames with a 2.4 total heading into Vancouver. The Canucks have a 3.2. Canucks, the biggest favorites on the board. That tells you everything you know about this slate. Vancouver going Pettersson, Besser, DeBrusk, Garland, Hedel, Arshdeep, Baines. I will mention the third line of Evander Kane, Braden Coots, and Jonathan Lekaramaki. Calgary going Kadri, Farabee, Klapka, Coronado, Frost, Greedon, and Backlund, Coleman, Zari. Like, you can say whatever you want about Vancouver. They're still a good defensive team, this and that. I'm probably out on Calgary. I will say Kadri, Farabee, Klapka, 11,600 if you want to play them.
I will mention Adam Klapka got benched last night for the final 10 minutes plus overtime.
There's a shocker.
I'm not even convinced that he's going to be in the lineup here tonight. So something to watch for at warm-ups.
Yeah. Vancouver side, listen, Pettersson had one of the worst seasons he could possibly have, assuming he's right mentally, assuming his knee feels decent, assuming he had his full nap, assuming he ate properly. This is a pretty good line. But a lot of things have to fall into place for Pettersson here. Calgary's backup is it Devin Cooley starting tonight? He couldn't even make it on the Sharks. So, I don't mind taking stab here on Pettersson, especially because Hughes and Hronek are healthy. When Hughes is in the lineup, the team is so much better offensively. It's kind of like the Werenski Calgary one. Assuming Pettersson is back to somewhere near what he was a few years ago, this line should be very good. They're fully correlated. The Flames penalty kill sucks. I do like Vancouver one here. You want a two-man of Hedel, Garland. I think, Hedel, when healthy, is a very, very good player. Him playing with Arshdeep, Baines is whatever, but a two-man of Hedel, Garland, I think is fine. Vander Kane, one-off, he's on the top power play, I think is fine. So really it's a Vancouver one game for me.
Yeah, no interest in Calgary for me. On the Vancouver side, just because they're perfectly correlated, then that's why I would have interest in Vancouver one. But again, they're in that mid-price range where there are a lot of lines to play. You can play Carolina one, you can play Montreal one, you can play Columbus one. Those are all lines I would probably rather play here tonight. I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's another one of those situations where if this is a 7-game slate, then I'm like, yeah, maybe I take a shot on Elias Pettersson. But he was terrible last year, and he was injured last year, and it was knee tendonitis, I believe. We don't know if he's going to be better this year. We hope he will be because he is an electric player to watch when he's at his best. But for now, we're just kind of guessing and hoping that he will be. Because they're perfectly correlated and not facing Dustin Wolf, I think they're in play. But the fact that there are so many lines in that price range that I'd rather play, that's why I'm not really in on anything in this game. I really wish Evander Kane was on the second line over Arshdeep, Baines. The Canucks as an organization seem to love this kid. I don't really see it with him. Maybe he sticks this year. We'll see what happens. But Vancouver's definitely a wait-and-see team because I'm not completely convinced that this isn't going to be a bad team once again.
Yeah. Whew. Not bad. Not bad. Let's talk about defensemen here. Top of the board, we have Makar, Werenski, Yossi, Quinn Hughes, Morrissey. Makar 7,600 cheap, Werenski 7,400 cheap, Yossi 7,200. Assuming he's healthy, he feels cheap. We've seen all these guys in the mid 8s at times. Makar is still the number one play for me. Werenski is one of those guys. If you're playing Columbus one, I think you kind of. You don't have to do anything. You don't want to. This isn't, whatever. But I think if you're playing Columbus one, you play Werenski. Makar, I think you can one off. You can play him in any format. I do like Quinn Hughes here. When he came back healthy in the second half last year, he was shooting the lights out of the puck. And that was his one issue from being a really good DFS defenseman was the shot volume. So I like Makar, Werenski, Hughes, Yossi. I like all those guys. I think the two I'd be most willing to one off are Makar and Hughes.
Yeah, I will say Quinn Hughes is the highest projected defenseman on the board here tonight. He also has the highest projected ownership of any player. He's at 25% projected. And like, I don't really care about it, but for basically the same price, if I can play Roman Josi at home against Columbus or Quinn Hughes at home against Calgary, and I can get Roman Josi at less than 1/3 of the ownership, like I'd rather play Josi. So for me, it goes Josi, Hughes, Werenski, and Dahlin. Those are the four guys amongst the expensive I consider. In the mid-price range, Jake Sanderson and Jackson Lacombe. I'd probably rather play Lacombe just because I think it's a better matchup. But, Sanderson gets a lot of minutes plus power play one. Rasmus Anderson for Calgary. He had he had a shot block bonus with 2 shots on goal last night. We talked about how good both his shots and blocking are, so I don't mind him. Neil Pionk. I don't like Pionk. He blocks shots and shoots a lot, and he's going to have to play a lot of minutes with Dylan Sandberg out. Gustav Forsling, I think, is in a good matchup. Owen Power and Dmitry Orlov, if you want to take a step down in price. Keandre Miller and Simon Edvinsson, I think, are in play as well. Hampus Lindholm and Marcus Pettersson from Vancouver playing on the second pair if you don't want to pay all the way up for Hughes, but you do want a cheap guy from a lopsided game. I think Pettersson is fine. The super cheap defenseman, the under 3K, Matt Grzelcyk, I believe, is at the top of the projections. That is terrifying. Carson Soucy, Kevin Ball played like 23 or 24 minutes last night for Calgary. They basically played like Ball, Weegar, and Anderson, and then just rotated the other 3 defensemen through them. And Jalen Chatfield, he's playing on the second pair for Carolina, typically has solid peripherals. Hopefully he can get some more minutes.
No Ryan Lindgren?
I'm saving that for a smaller slate.
For sure. Let's talk about goalies at the top of the board. We got Thatcher Demko, Kira Schmid, Scott Wedgwood, Bob, Korpisalo, Vasilevsky, Freddie Anderson, John Gibson, John Binnington, Joey Daccord, a who's who of why are they priced above 8K. Listen, at 8,500, I think, if you're playing cash, I think Demko is fine. But in GPPs, you need a shutout. I want to see if he's healthy first, and I don't really want to play an 8,500 Thatcher Demko on a 14-game slate. If I'm spending up, the 2 guys for me would be Joey Daccord and Andrei Vasilevsky. I think Jordan Binnington is also fine, assuming St. Louis can stay out of the box. Going back to Igor Shesterkin at 7,800, I think he wasn't the issue against Pittsburgh. I think that is going to be a sentence I say a lot this season. Jake Ottinger also at 7,800. Those are 2 guys in that price range that I want. Hellebuck, anytime he's under 8K, he's $7,600 at home. That's a wild misprice. So yeah, interested in him. I would have interest in Jack Greaves, but Connor Hellebuck's only $100 more. So Lucas Dostal, 7,400. Listen, I'm going to stack goalies against Carolina until they can prove they can actually score instead of just not have the expected goals. So Jacob Markstrom, Spencer Knight, any team against Boston, I will have interest in as well. That's really about as low as I want to go. If I had to go lower, it would probably be Olmark, which is the same price. But Tampa is pretty efficient. So I think I'm going to live in that Igor down to Spencer Knight range today.
Yeah, I don't mind Demko just because it's the same thing as yesterday with Calgary. It's they don't generate very good shot quality. I guess we forgot that against Stuart Skinner, every shot has good shot quality. Andrei Vasilevsky's at the top of my board. I believe he's number 2 by points per dollar on Stochastic here tonight amongst goalies. So I really do like Ottinger, or Vasilevsky. Sorry. I also do like Jake Ottinger. I'm not really that worried. Winnipeg is basically a 1-line team now. So I'm not super concerned about that, but I think Vasilevsky is the expensive goalie I really like. Going down a little bit, you mentioned Hellebuck. I don't mind Hellebuck either. What concerns me is that Dallas isn't I mean, maybe things change with a new coach, but they're typically not a high shot volume team. They're typically just a high scoring team, very efficient. So we'll see if that changes. But obviously, Hellebuck, I like Dostal at his price. Jacob Markstrom, 7,300, as you mentioned. Any goalie against Carolina, I always have interest. Screw it, Jet Greaves, 7,500. Our Lumbus boys, can't go against them. Listen, Nashville couldn't score at 5-on-5 last year, and it wasn't just bad luck. They ran a very poor offense. Unless that changes, this is going to be a bad scoring team again this year.
We will be back on Saturday because there is no games tomorrow for reasons beyond our belief. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
Well, I know that I said that I might not necessarily have a ton of interest in him, but I really like this player. We'll see what happens tonight. I'm going with Dylan Guenther.
So you're a Blue Jays fan. I'm a Yankees fan. I woke up at 6:25 this morning to a message from Cliffy, like, oh, he's already looking at the slate. It is a clip of Vladimir Guerrero and David Ortiz going, duh, Yankees lose. Alex DeBrincat.
Yeah, fair enough. I deserve that.
That is a really funny clip, though. I did save it, and I will be using it. But no, that honestly, for 14 games, that went pretty smooth. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you Saturday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern.
Good luck tonight, everyone.